All right, this is Math 209, Week 2, Section 6.3, continuing to factor trinomials. So what we're going to do here is we're going to continue doing that box method. All right, so we've got, let's see, 3c squared plus 16c plus 5, all right? And so again, we're going to, make that box, 2 by 2 box. And we know that this first term has to go right in the upper left-hand corner, and that last term has to go in the right corner. And when we're looking at this 3c squared, the only way you can create that 3c squared is if you have a 3c and another c. Now here's the deal. With that first term right here, I want you to set it and forget it. All right, that's the phrase. Set it and now forget it. Now with the 5, we have some choices. We can either do a 1 and a 5, or we can reverse it and have a 5 and a 1. So that's the trick. That's where we're going to have to do some guesswork here, because with that 5, there's only one way to do it, 1 and 5 or 5 and 1, right? So let's do some guesswork. I have no idea how it's going to work. So let's put the 1 here and the 5 here. And now what we're going to do is we're going to continue through to see if our guess is correct. Now if it's not correct, we just back up and try the other option. So right here is going to be 3c, right here is going to be 5c, and then when we add, of course, the 3c squared is going to work, and of course the 5 is going to work. Now, but right here, our choices, 5c and 3c, there's no combination of 5c and 3c, either by adding or by subtracting, will we ever get a 16. So that means our guess is wrong. All right, so now what we need to do is I need to delete my choices, because that's just not going to work. And so I'm going to delete my choices, and we're going to try the other way, which is now I'm going to try the 5 here and the 1 there. So I'm kind of swapping. I had the 5 down here. Now we're going to try it here. So let's continue, and we work through it. So this is 15c, because 3c times 5 is 15c, and then down here we've got 1c. And now that we're looking at it, sure enough, the 3c squared works. We know the 5 is going to work. Now, in our middle terms here, 1c and 15c, is there a way that we can get 16? Yeah, if we add them both. So we want both of these to be positive, which means that 5 is going to be positive, the 1 is going to be positive, everything is all good. And so we now see that 3c squared is right here. We see that these middle terms equal 16c, and this last one is 5. So we get exactly what we wanted. So what are our factors? 3c plus 1, that's this guy right here, and then c plus 5. And that is our factor. Now, how can we check if we're right? Well, you could take the 3c plus 1 and the c plus 5, and you can put it in a box. 3c plus 1, c plus 5, and you could actually do all the multiplication, and if you end up with the original trinomial, 3c squared plus 6c plus 5, that means our factors is correct. Of course, it is correct though. All right, so more of the same. So we've got, let's see, 5m squared plus 17m plus 10. All right, so now I'm going to go over here. I'm going to make my little box right there. And then in our place, of course we know what goes in the upper left-hand corner. It's 5m squared. And of course, we know going down here in the lower right, it's 10, or really more appropriately, positive 10. So then the idea is, okay, what are we going to do up here? Well, we're going to put our 5m and m. And now we're going to set it and forget it. We're going to leave those right there. And it's this 10 that we're going to play with because as we think about it, well, 10 could be either 1 times 10 or 10 times 1. It could be 2 times 5 or it could be 5 times 2. All right? And what I mean, the reason I'm writing both of them is because you could either have, like, in the case of, let's do the 2 and the 5, or the 5 and the 2. You could either have, like, the 2 here and the 5 there, or you could have the 5 here and the 2 there. So it's your choice, right? In fact, let's start with this configuration. All right, let's see if this works. So I'm going to continue it out, 5m, and then right here is going to be 10m. And we can see that there's no now the 5m squared we know is going to work. The 10 is going to work. So it's really just these middle terms to see if we're going to get 17. And there's no way that we can get 17. So that tells us that the 5 and 2 is wrong. All right, so that means we can get rid of the 5 and the 2, and we know that that's wrong. So let's try 2 and 5, and we're going to just fill it in, right? So what goes here? That's going to be the 25m, and then what's going to go right here? 2m. And we know the first and the last terms are going to work perfectly. So is there any way we can use these two numbers to get 17? Nope, there is no way. So that tells us that the 2 and 5 configuration, or guess, are wrong. So we're going to put, so we know that both of those now are wrong. So we're just kind of going through the list. I'm just kind of making a guess and a check, right? And so as we keep going here, and things are beeping and bonging, we got 10 and 1. So there's a 10, there's a 1. And now we're going to fill it in. And so right here is 10m. And then right here is 5m. And is there a way? We know the first term is going to work. We know the last term is going to work, so it's really only the middles. Is there any way we can get 17m? Nope, no way. So that tells us that the 10 and 1 guess is totally wrong. So we're going to get rid of those, and we are going to cross off this guy, so he's wrong. So we're kind of marching our way through. Now we have one last guess to try, 1 and 10. And so now we're going to fill in our spots. We get 1m and 50m. And there is definitely no way that we can get 17 here. So that tells us all 4 of our possibilities fail. They don't work. So that tells us that this is prime. It cannot be factored. All right, so we're going to more of the same here. We've got, let's see, 4a squared plus 9a plus 5. So that's our trinomial. And of course, we're going to make our box over here. And we definitely know that 4a squared goes here, and we definitely know that positive 5 goes there. So now we've got 2 amounts of guessing to do, all right? And this is just a tremendous amount of guessing because 4 can either be created by 4 times 1 or 2 times 2, all right? And then fortunately back here, 5 can only has one choice, right? 5 can either be 1 and 5, right? And so we are we have a few guesses that we need to try. And we're going to start with the 4. All right, now how do we want it? What do you want to guess? Do we want to guess the 4 and 1 or 2 and 2? It really doesn't matter what you want to guess. So let's guess 4 and 1. So I'm going to guess 4A and 1A. All right, and so there's my guess. And now over here for the 5, well, 5 and 1. So we can either do the 1 here or the 1 here. And it's, again, it's a pure guess. So I'm going to start with the 1 here and the 5 here, and we're going to see how we do. All right. So when I do that, we're going to do our little multiplication. We get 5A, I get 4A, and now it is time for us to see if we're right. Well, we definitely know the first term is going to work. We definitely know the last term is going to work. So do our middle terms, can we figure out how to use these middle terms to get 9A? Yeah, we're going to add them both. We're going to add both of them. So that means that's going to be a positive 1. This is going to be a positive 5. Everything works out and gives us that 4A squared plus 9A plus 5. So that's exactly what we wanted. So that on our first try means our factors are 4A plus 5, because that's right here, times A plus 1, because you don't need the 1. So it's just A plus 1, and there you go. We have factored this trinomial. All right, so the problems are really the same. They're just kind of getting more guesswork involved. So we've got 9c squared plus 18c plus 8. And we're going to make our factor, our box. And we definitely know that 9c squared goes in the upper left corner. And we know that 8 goes in the lower right corner. So we've got the first term and the last term taken care of. Now we've got a tremendous amount of guessing going on here, because 9 can either be 3 times 3, or it could be 1 times 9. And then in the same way, 8, a lot of guessing, 8 can either be 1 times 8 or 2 times 4. And then, of course, the reverse, because we're always going to set it and forget it on this first term. It's the last term that not only do we need to do 1 times 8, but we also need to think about like 8 times 1, right? So let's begin the guessing. And the guessing begins with, do we want to start with 3 times 3, or do we want to start with 1 times 9? Now, to be honest, I generally start with the numbers that are closest to each other. So I'm going to start with 3c times 3c. And that, of course, gives me the 9c squared that I want. So now over here, what do I want? Well, I'm going to start with the numbers that are closest to each other, 2 and 4. And so it's a guessing game as to where we're going to put the 2 and where we're going to put the 4. So let's put the 2 here and the 4 here, just because it's a total guess on my part. So when we multiply it out to see if we're right, we get right here, we get 6c, and then right here we get 12c. Now we know that the first term works out 9c squared. We know the last term works out 8, because that was how we guessed. So it's the middle terms that we need to see if they're going to equal 18c, and they sure enough, the way they do is if you add them both as positives. So that makes this a positive 2, this makes it a positive 4, and so our factors are 3c plus 4 and 3c plus 2. Total guess, and I happen to get it on the right first try, but oftentimes you're just going to start with your first term, you set it and you forget it. And then it's the second term that, okay, well, if the 2 and the 4 didn't work, I would have reversed it and tried the 4 and the 2. And then if that didn't work, then I would try the 1 and the 8. And if that didn't work, I'd reverse it and do the 8 and the 1. And so there's a lot of guessing, and sometimes it's cumbersome. But as you do it more and more, you will get luckier and luckier as you develop your, experience. All right, so we've got, let's see, the terms are, let's see, 6, the trinomial is 6x squared minus 17x plus 7. So we're going to go over here, we're going to make our box. And of course, we're going to put the 6x squared in the upper left-hand corner. We're going to put the 7 in the right corner. And now it's all about that middle term. And we're going to begin our guessing. Now with our 6, we have a couple of choices. Of course, we have 1 times 6. We also have 2 times 3. And then with our 7, we only have one choice, 1 times 7. So we don't have too much guessing that we're going to need to do. So let's start with, again, I generally start with the numbers that are closest to each other, so 2 and 3, just because. So I'm going to put 2x here. I'm going to put 3x there. Yes, I could have reversed it and had the 3 down here and the 2 up here, but I'm going to set it and forget it. So now I'm going to start focusing on my 7. So I need to figure out, of course, there's only one way to get 7, 1 times 7, or I could do 7 times 1. All right, and so I'm going to guess, and I'm going to put the 7 here, and I'm going to put the 1 here. It's a pure guess. Now, when we multiply, I get 3x here, I get 14x here. Now, you notice I'm not even worrying about the negatives or anything. I'm just dealing with the numbers as they are. Because I know the first term is going to work out, 6x squared, it's right there. And then the 7, it's going to be right there. Now I'm going to look at these middle terms, and I'm going to say, using these middle terms, can I get negative 17? And the answer is yeah. If they're both negative, then I could get a negative 17. But how do I get a negative 14x? Well, that means this 7 has to be a negative. And then how do I get this negative 3x? Well, that means this 1 has to be a negative. And sure enough, negative 1 times negative 7 gives me the positive 7 that we wanted in the first place. And so now if we look back and add our like terms, 6x squared is perfect. And then we've got right here our middle terms. Negative 3x and negative 14x gives us negative 17x, which is what we wanted. And then we have the plus 7. So we get exactly what we were looking for. So what does that mean our factors are? Well, it means they are 2x minus 1, that's right here, times, and then right here, 3x minus 7. And that is this trinomial factored right here. Okay, so now the numbers are getting bigger, but it's the same basic process. So our trinomial is 7t squared minus 41t minus 56. So our box method, our box is going to be over here, and of course we've got 7t squared up there. We've got negative 56 down here. And so the negative is important right here, but now for the sake of solving the problem, I'm going to really ignore the signs for a second. So we've got some guesswork, but not too much guesswork here, because the only way to get 7 is if you have, 1 and 7. That's the only way you can make a 7. Now it's the 56. A lot of guesswork here. You've got 1 times 56. You've got 2 times 28. You've got 4 times, oh my gosh, 4 times, what is it, 14? 14. Let's see, what else do we have? 5, 6, 7. Then we've got 7 times 8. So we've got a lot of guessing. This front term, 1t and 7t, now we can set it and forget it because there's no other options there. Now over here, we might have, like for example, the 1 and the 56. We might have the 1 here and the 56 here, or reverse it and have the 1 here and the 56 up here. There's just a lot of guesswork. Now, we can do a little bit of logic here, and we know that we want some sort of combination that equals 41, and I'm looking and I see a 7. I'm looking at all these numbers, and I don't know. Let's do 14 and 4. 4 and 14. 28 plus 14. No, boy, this is just going to be a lot of gross guesswork. 56. Okay, so let's start with 2 and 28. Okay, so let's put the 2 here and the 28 here, I guess. Or the 7. I don't know what to do. Boy, this is... Oh, I get it. I see it. I'm going to do the 7 and the 8. Okay, so I'm going to put the 7 here and the 8 here. All right? And that should have been my first guess. I should always choose the numbers that are the closest to each other. And sure enough, that's going to work out. Check this out. Now, I put the 7 and the 8 right here because I see that 7 times 7t, that gives me 49t. And then I see over here 1t times 8, so that's 8t. So now if we're going to check, well, by combining like terms, we know the first term works because, it was a given, and we know the last term always works. So it's these middle terms that we need to pay attention to and say, well, using 49 and 8, can I get 41? The answer is yes. But I need a negative 41. So how can I use these two numbers to get a negative 41? Well, make this a negative 49 and this a positive 8. And now I've got negative 41. So if I need this to be a positive 8t, that means this 8 must be a positive 8. And if I need this to be a negative 49t, that means this 7 must have been a negative 7. So now if we look, we can see, 1t times 7t is 7t squared. I see negative 7 times positive 8 gives me the negative 56. And then sure enough, negative 7 times 7t is negative 49t, and 1t times 8t is 8 is 8t. And so there is our factors. So we know that if we were to add these together and combine our like terms, we would get exactly what we're hoping for. So what are our factors? T minus 7, that's this right here, and then 7t plus 8 is our second factor. And look at that. Got that using a little bit of logic and I was going to get ready to do a lot of guesswork. All right, so this is just kind of an ugly problem, but it's more of the same. Nothing really different other than it's just kind of ugly numbers. And it's going to require a lot of guesswork on our part. So the idea is we know that we're going to have that box, And we know that we're going to have 60m squared here, and we know that we're going to have negative 30 there. And so we need to do a lot of guesswork. And so the guesswork is on both of these terms, right? Both the 60 and the 30 require just a lot of guesswork. For example, the 60, you can have 1 times 60, 2 times 30, 3 times 20, let's see, 4 times 15, you can have 5 times 12, and then 6 times 10. So the ton of guessing for the 60. And then for the 30, you've got a ton of guessing. You've got 1 and 30, 2 times 15, 3 times 10, and 5 times 6. So what I like to do is I like to choose something that's really close to each other, and I want to do some guess and check. Now the idea though is I know that something has to be odd, because I know that our middle term is going to be 47, okay? So that means I'm probably not going to guess the 6 and 10. I'm going to probably start with the 5 and the 12. I could do the 4 and the 15 because those are odd, the 15 and the 5, right? So I'm going to start with the 5 and the 12. And let's put the 5 there, the 12 there. And then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to start with the numbers that are closest and kind of work my way up the list. So 5 and 6. So where am I going to put my 5? Where am I going to put my 6? It's just pure guesswork. And so let's start with, let's put the 5 here and the 6 here. And if that doesn't work, we'll reverse the 5 and the 6. So let's take a look. So this becomes 30m. This becomes 50, 60m. So that's no good, because there's no way 60m and 30m are going to give us 47. So let's swap the 5 and the 6. Let's try that. So this gives me 25m and 672m. And lo and behold, oh my goodness, well, I got lucky here. This is just pure luck. Because I can see that if this is a negative 72 and this is a positive 25, I can see that 72 minus 25 is 47. So that means negative 72 plus 25 gives me negative 47. Which means if this is a negative 72m, that means this has got to be a negative 6. And if this is a positive 25, that's got to be a positive 5. And now I can see that positive 5 times negative 6 gives me the negative 30. And so there is, oh my gosh, I got lucky. So what are our factors? It's 5m minus 6 and 12m plus 5. And there is our factoring. All right, so I'm going to show you another way to do the same kind of technique, right, is to factor. But here is another way. You might like it, you might not. Let's see, and I'll let you choose. All right. So the idea is, again, we know that we're going to try and factor. Let's see, this 4x squared plus 23x minus 6. All right. So the idea is we definitely know it's going to be a 2 by 2 grid. We definitely know that the 4x squared goes there and the negative 6 goes here. All right. So then the idea, here's the other trick, this new way. You take the 4 and the negative 6 and you multiply them together, and you're going to get 24. Well, let's ignore the signs. So 4 times 6 is 24. So we know it's 24. Now, let's think of all the ways you can multiply numbers to get 24. Well, you could do 1 times 24, 2 times 12, 3 times 8, and 4 times 6. And you look, and do we have a combination that would give us 23? And you go, yeah, it's the 1 and the 24 that would give us 23. In fact, but how would you get 23? Well, the 1 would have to be a negative, and the 24 would have to be a positive. So we're going to take that, and we're going to insert that into right here. So this 1, negative 1, we're just going to put negative 1x, and then this positive 24, we're going to put positive 24x, all right? So there we go. And now we're going to kind of work in reverse. Well, we know the way you get x squared is it's got to be x times x, all right? Now, let's see, how are we going to get this 4, all right? Well, if I look up here, so the only thing these two guys have in common is an x. So I'm going to factor out the x. But if I go this way, up and down, what do they have in common? Well, they each have an x, so I factor out an x. But going up and down, they also have a 4 in common. That means this guy has to be a 4. So we have 4x times x gives us 4x squared. Now, if this guy has to be a 4, then what does this number here? Well, 4 times what gives us 24? Well, that makes this a 6. All right. Well, if we know that this guy has to be a 6, then what does this guy have to be? Well, if we want negative 6, that means this guy up here has to be a negative 1. And so now we have our answer. So we've got 4x times x gives us 4x squared. That's right here. And then we see that x times negative 1 is negative 1x. 6 times 4x is 24x. And if we were to add these guys together right here, that gives us plus 23x. And then this guy has no like terms, so we're done. So what are our factors? We've got x plus 6 and 4x minus 1. This is called factor by grouping. When you take the first and the last and multiply them and get 24, and that means, and so that gives you your inside terms, and then you factor out, because we've learned how to factor out. So let's do that same method that's called factor by grouping. And so we've got 35y squared minus 6y plus 2. And we know our box is going to have 35y squared up here. It's going to have 2 down here. And then I'm going to take the 35 and the 2 and I'm going to multiply them, and I get 70. So now I'm going to think of all the ways I could get 70. Well, that's 1 times 70, 2 times 35. Let's see, not 3, not 4. I could do 5. Let's see, 5 times 14. I could do 6. No, 6. No, 7. 7. I could do 7 times 10. Let's see, 1. Let's see, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to factor. 7 times 10, that's 2 times 5. So let's see, I've got 2 times 35, I've got 1 times 70. I'm just really just thinking about making sure I have all my combinations, and it looks like I do. Now the thing I'm noticing is none of these terms will add together to give me -6. So what does that tell me? That tells me that this polynomial is prime. All right, this is just more of the same, except it's just a huge, ugly, gross problem. So you've got 90m squared minus 137m minus 45. And I'm going to do that first way that I showed you. So you've got 90m squared is going to go right here. -45 is going to go here. Now we've just got a ton of guessing to do. We're going to temporarily ignore the sign. We don't worry about the sign at first. So let's focus on that 90. Well, what are all the ways you could get 90? Well, 90 could be 1 times 90, 2 times 45, 3 times 30. Let's see, 4 and 5. 5. You could do 5 times 18. 6. Let's see, 6 times 15. 7, 8, 9. 9. You could do 9 times 10. Okay, so you got a lot of choices right there. All right, and so a lot of choices for 90. Let's do our choices for 45. Well, what are our choices for 45? Well, you could do, let's see, 45 can be 1 times 45. You could do 3 times 15. 4, 5. You could do 5 times 9. 5, 6, 7, and there you go. There's our choices for 45. So we've got a lot of guesses that we're going to have to run through. All right, now I tend to say, well, let's start with the numbers that are the closest. All right, now, but I know I need to get 137, and that's just a really unusual number. All right, so I'm going to start with 6 and 15, so 6m and 15m as my 90, and I'm going to set it and forget it. Now I'm going to run through these, but you know, let's see, 5 and 9, now 3, 15, 15 and 3. So I'm just kind of quickly thinking of the numbers, and I know that I'm going to multiply and I'm going to get stuff, right? And so I'm really just kind of thinking about numbers. Well, let's start with the 5 and the 9, I guess. I don't know. I'm really at a loss here. So let's start with 5 and 9, and let's do 9 here and 5 here. I'm just kind of guessing here. So this is 75m, and this is 54m. And is there a way that I can use these two numbers to get -137? No. No. So that 5 and 9 is wrong. So, but I might need to try the 9 and the 5. So I might need to reverse that. So let's do the 9 down here and the 5 up here. And again, all of this is me just guessing the 6 and the 15. I might have to go and try the 9 and the 10. So this is just a ton of guessing. So this is 30m, and this is 49, 45, 435m. So there's no way that these numbers are going to give me 137m in any way. So we know that doesn't work. So I'm really kind of feeling like the 5 and the 9 are wrong. That the 5 and the 9, no matter how we cut it, are just not going to work. So that's what I'm going to say. So I'm going to stick with that 6 and the 15. But let's see. Let's try, I don't know, 15 and 3. That just doesn't feel right. That's not, I don't feel like that's going to work. And so I'm just going to keep guessing and guessing and guessing, and until I finally get my answer, right? So let's, because really 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3. So 6 choices here, 3 choices here. That's 18 choices that I'm going to have to just keep guessing until I get it, right? So let's try 3 and 15, I guess. 3 and 15, or 15 and 3. 45, if I put a 3 here, that would, and 15, that would give me 90 M and 45 M. Well, that's not going to give me the 137 that I want in any way. So that just doesn't seem like it's going to work. So I'm going to cross that off. And so now we've got the 1 and the 45. Ooh, 1 here. No, 45 and 1. No, that's going to just, if I put the 45 here, that's 6 times 45. That's going to be in the hundreds. And no, so I don't even think the 1 times 45. So really what I think I just did is I think I just showed us that it's not going to be 6 times 15. So now we've got to try something new. So I'm probably going to go with the 5 and the 18 next. So I'm going to get rid of those, and I'm going to try the 5 and the 18. All right. So I'm trying the 5 and the 18. So now I got to go back and I got to try all of these again. And so I'm going to start with 5 here and the 9 here. So I'm going back to this list, and I grab the 5 and the 9. And so that gives me 25M, and this gives me 972, 162. And look at that. When I do 162 minus 25, that gives me 137. Rockin'. So I need a negative 137, so that means I've got, this needs to be, oops, that was supposed to be 162M. So that means this needs to be a negative 162, and this has to be a positive 25, which makes that a positive 5, makes this a negative 9, and there are our factors. 5m minus 9 times 18m plus 5. That is a gross problem. A lot of choices to be guessing, and I just had to use some logic to finally get us to find out that it's the 5 and the 18 and the 5 and the 9. Oh, gross. And that wraps up this video.